The desert doesn't lie. When metal burns and men don't come home, the desert holds the truth long after the government stopped talking. And right now, somewhere in the sand, there is wreckage. American wreckage. And the story behind it is one of the most explosive military failures of the last decade. A failure that Washington desperately wants you to forget about before you even find out it happened. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change the way you look at the Middle East, at American military power, and at the very real and very dangerous game being played right now between the United States and Iran. We are talking about a covert rescue mission, a mission that was supposed to be invisible, a mission that was supposed to be over before the sun came up. A C-130 Hercules, one of the toughest, most battle-hardened aircraft in the entire US military, destroyed. 2 Blackhawk helicopters gone, and the men on board those aircraft, the ones who volunteered to go into the dark so that other Americans could come home, they never made it back. This is not speculation. This is not a theory. The wreckage is real. The silence from Washington is real. And the message that Iran just sent to every single adversary and ally on this planet, that message is very, very real. But before we get into exactly how this happened, I need you to understand something about Iran that most people in the West have completely wrong. They picture Iran as a rogue state, disorganized, operating on emotion and ideology rather than strategy and precision. That picture is dangerously outdated, and this mission, this catastrophic, devastating mission, is the proof. Iran has been preparing for a moment exactly like this for over 20 years, quietly, methodically. While American politicians debated sanctions and diplomats exchanged carefully worded statements, Iran was building something that nobody in Washington wanted to believe was possible. And on the night that C-130 went down, they showed the world exactly what they had built. Let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand what happened in that desert, you need to understand the fire that has been burning between these two nations for more than 4 decades. It started in 1979, the Iranian Revolution. The American embassy in Tehran stormed, 52 Americans taken hostage, 444 days of humiliation that left a wound in the relationship between these two countries that has never healed, not once, not even close. Every military confrontation since then, every covert operation, every downed drone, every proxy war fought through Hezbollah and the Houthis and the militias in Iraq, all of it is connected. All of it flows from that original rupture. And what happened with this rescue mission is not an isolated incident. It is the latest and most violent chapter in a conflict that never officially became a war, but has always been a war. Now here is what we know about the mission itself. American intelligence had received credible high-level information that American personnel, not equipment, not assets in the abstract sense, but actual human beings, American men and women, were in danger inside Iranian-controlled territory. The kind of danger where you don't wait for a diplomatic cable. The kind of danger where you call in your best pilots and your most experienced operators and you tell them the mission is a go. The plan was precise. The kind of precision that takes weeks to develop. Layers of intelligence, satellite imagery, signal intercepts, human sources on the ground. A C-130 Hercules would anchor the operation, carrying personnel, supplies, functioning as the mobile command center of the entire mission. 2 Blackhawk helicopters would execute the actual extraction, low altitude, high speed, below radar, in and out, before Iranian forces could even begin to respond. On paper, it was exactly the kind of operation that America has executed successfully dozens of times in the most hostile environments on Earth. These were not rookies. These were not improvised plans thrown together at the last minute. This was the result of meticulous preparation by some of the most skilled military professionals the United States has ever produced. And Iran was waiting for every single one of them. That is the part that should send a chill down your spine. Not just that the mission failed. Missions fail. That happens in war. What should stop you cold is that Iran knew, whether it was a leak inside the intelligence chain, a communications intercept, persistent drone surveillance over a period of days, something gave them the warning they needed. And they used that warning perfectly. They had positioned surface-to-air missile batteries in the operational zone. They had scrambled air defense units. They had a coordinated response ready to execute the moment those American aircraft crossed into range. This was not a lucky shot. This was a trap, a calculated, pre-positioned, intelligently executed trap, and the C-130 flew directly into it. The aircraft never reached the extraction point. It was hit. The wreckage, pieces of one of America's most durable and trusted military aircraft, scattered across the desert floor. The two Blackhawks, their pilots trying to adapt in real time the way trained combat aviators do, trying to find a way to salvage something from the disaster unfolding around them, both went down. The mission was over. The disaster had replaced it, and now think about what that means in human terms before we go any further into the geopolitics and the strategy. A C-130 crew can be anywhere from 6 to 8 personnel, depending on mission configuration. Each Blackhawk carries a flight crew plus a combat team. We are potentially talking about dozens of men. Men who kissed their wives before they left. Men who told their kids they would be home soon. Men who believed in the mission, believed in the plan, believed in each other. Those men deserved better than what they got. They deserved a mission that was protected from compromise. They deserved intelligence that was airtight. They deserved a chain of command that asked every hard question before giving the green light, not after. And the silence that followed their deaths, the carefully managed, strategically timed silence from Washington, that silence is its own kind of betrayal. Why the silence? Because the truth of what happened in that desert is politically catastrophic on multiple levels simultaneously. If Washington officially confirms the full scope of this operation and its failure, they are forced to admit that Iran detected, tracked, and destroyed advanced American military aircraft in a coordinated attack. That is not a minor admission. That completely overturns the strategic assumption that American air power can operate in contested Iranian airspace with acceptable risk. That assumption has been the foundation of military planning in the Middle East for 30 years. They would also have to answer questions about how Iran knew the mission was coming. Intelligence failure is a phrase that sounds bureaucratic until you connect it to real names and real faces and real families. A leak at that level of classification is not just an embarrassment, it is a federal crime and potentially a national security catastrophe. The investigation that would follow would be enormous, invasive, and almost impossible to contain from the public eye. And then there is the question of what American personnel were doing in or near Iranian-controlled territory in the first place. Operations that have never been officially acknowledged, activities that exist in the space between what governments admit and what they actually do. Opening that door means opening a room that Washington has kept locked for a very long time. So you get the silence, you get the managed narrative, you get this story buried under the avalanche of other news cycles, other crises, other carefully timed announcements designed to redirect attention. It is not conspiracy, it is just how institutional self-preservation works. When the truth is too expensive, you find a way to delay paying for it. But here is what history tells us about buried truths involving military wreckage in foreign deserts. They do not stay buried. The metal sits there. The Iranian state media circulates footage. The families of the men who didn't come home start asking questions at a volume that becomes impossible to ignore. And eventually, always eventually, the surface cracks. Let us talk about what Iran gains from this, because that dimension of the story is just as important as the military dimension, and it is getting almost no attention in mainstream coverage. When Iran destroys a C-130 and 2 Blackhawk helicopters in a single coordinated operation, the military victory is significant, yes. But the informational victory, the message it sends to every government, every military, every adversary and proxy force watching from the outside, that is potentially even more significant. Iran is broadcasting to the world, we can see you coming. We can track your most sophisticated aircraft. We can stop your best planned operations. We are not the inferior military that Western planners assumed we were. That message lands in Moscow, where military planners are updating their analysis of American operational vulnerability. It lands in Beijing, where strategic thinkers are measuring the gap between American capabilities and American confidence. It lands in Pyongyang, where a regime that has always relied on the belief that America could not successfully strike its facilities is now feeling more confident in that belief. One failed mission in a desert does not rewrite the global military balance overnight. but it contributes to a picture that America's adversaries are assembling very deliberately, very patiently. Iran has spent the last 2 decades building an air defense network that is fundamentally different from what they had during the previous generation of confrontation with the United States. They have invested heavily in domestically produced surface-to-air missile systems, reducing their dependence on foreign suppliers who could be pressured to cut them off. They received significant technology transfers from Russia, particularly after the deepening of that relationship following 2022. They reverse-engineered captured American surveillance drones, incorporating design elements into their own systems. The network they operate today is layered, multiple overlapping systems at different altitudes and ranges, designed specifically to defeat the kind of low-altitude, high-speed penetration approach that the Blackhawks were using. American military planners who rated Iranian air defense as a manageable obstacle, a problem that American jamming and evasion could handle comfortably, are now conducting emergency reassessments. Those reassessments affect every future operation across the entire region, not just operations targeting Iran directly. Every operation where Iranian-aligned forces are present, where Iranian air defense assets might be positioned, where the possibility of Iranian involvement in a contested airspace situation exists. The strategic ripple effects of one destroyed C-130 extend much further than the impact crater in that desert. There is a question that has to be asked honestly about whether this mission should have launched at all, given what the intelligence picture apparently showed. The answer is complicated, but it is not comfortable. Covert rescue operations at this scale do not receive authorization lightly. The decision chain from field commanders up through Special Operations Command, through the Pentagon, to the executive level involves multiple points where someone can raise a red flag, ask for more time, demand more certainty about the intelligence picture. The fact that the mission launched into a situation where Iran was apparently ready means that somewhere in that chain, warnings were either not raised, not heard, or not acted upon. That is not a criticism of the men on those aircraft. They executed their orders with the professionalism and courage that defines American special operations. The failure, if there was a failure of decision-making rather than just catastrophic operational luck, belongs to the institutional process, not to the warriors who trusted it. What happens next is a question that everyone from Washington to Tehran, to every capital city in the region, is now focused on with acute intensity. A direct military response against Iran is an option that carries escalation risks that are genuinely terrifying to consider. Iran has the ability to activate proxy forces across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen. A direct strike against Iranian territory could ignite a regional conflict with no clear endpoint and massive civilian and military costs on multiple sides. The memory of how quickly situations in the Middle East can spiral from a contained confrontation into a full regional war is very present in the minds of the people making these decisions. A covert response, a mirror of the approach that led to this disaster, carries exactly the same risks that produced the disaster in the first place, now compounded by the fact that Iranian intelligence has just demonstrated it can penetrate American operational security at a very high level. A diplomatic response, working through back channels and third-party intermediaries, feels almost laughably inadequate as a reaction to the destruction of American aircraft and the deaths of American military personnel. The domestic political pressure for something more decisive than a quiet diplomatic note is enormous. And doing nothing, absorbing the loss, recalibrating quietly, moving on without visible response, sends a message to Iran and to every other adversary watching that American red lines are negotiable, that American military losses in covert operations are acceptable without consequence. That message has its own strategic costs that could echo for years. There are no clean options. There are no solutions that do not carry significant risks. This is the reality that the decision makers are operating inside right now. And understanding that reality is part of understanding why the official response has been so careful and so controlled. What I can tell you with certainty is that this story is far from over. The wreckage in that desert is real. The men who didn't come home are real. The strategic implications cascading outward from this failure are real. And the accountability, the genuine, honest, unflinching accounting of what went wrong and who made the decisions that led to it, That accountability has not happened yet, but it will. It always does. The desert holds the truth, and eventually the truth comes home.